Hello and welcome to Tapas and Pretzels, the adorsys podcast. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hello and welcome to our Tapas and Pretzels podcast. Today we actually should rename the podcast to Tapas and Pretzels and Sachertorte because we have Gregor Zeiler here today. So welcome, Gregor Zeiler. Nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So not only that he is the CEO and founder of DataStack, he also has an impressive 30 years of experience in the field of data and analytics. So you're just I would say, a true expert when it comes to all things about data. And I'm really thrilled that we have you here in our podcast. And we talked about what we could talk is about decentralization. And I think decentralization is like everywhere. You have it in the software development. But what do you think? It's maybe a pretty new thing for data also. So how would you describe it? I would say decentralization in data. So what is this actually? So Greg.
Yeah, general, it's from my point of view, it's not that new. So in general, that approach of data mesh, data products, that's quite new, of course. But in general, the intention behind that decentralization is quite old. So let's think back, and that's where I come from that centralized data warehouse solutions. So 2 or 3 decades ago, it was a centralized data storage, and everybody tries to achieve to be a little bit independent from that centralized approach, building their own reports and so on. So many years ago, that journey of data democratization already starts in terms of self-service BI and other things like that. And from my point of view, that data products approach is so nothing else than a further step towards that data democratization, that everybody is able to not only to prepare reports, but also prepare data for their own purposes and their needs. So that's a long-lasting journey, and not really new, but quite important that this is not only limited to that reporting capabilities, but also available to those data manipulations and data preparations aspects which are able to inside data products right now. So that's my point of view on that thing.
I like that point of view, and I think the old principle is basically divide and conquer. I think the ancient Romans had it already in place. Like, if you want to rule something bigger, you need to divide and conquer it. And I think that worked out pretty well for the Roman Empire, in my opinion. So I think it's a good thing that we could adapt for the data world, as you described pretty well. What is your feeling like? When did it actually start? Because like we have seen in the past a lot of efforts in centralizing it into enterprise data warehouses and data lakes, but where in the observation, I mean, you have 3 decades of experience here right now.
Yeah.
Where did you like feel the first time like where this turned around into decentralization?
So I think it starts quite early when you remember the time of that centralized data warehouse approaches where the data marts are born and data marts are built for different, so let's say, business areas. These data mart specific things are the first step towards that decentralization, because in the back end you have that centralized data warehouse, but for specific purposes you have built some general data marts which are able to answer those business questions in those things. So that's 25 years ago where the journey starts. But in general, it sounds a little bit crazy, but when you think about that big data hype where new technology appears and everybody follow that approach, okay, let's put all those source data inside the data lake and build a kind of a self-service platform where everybody can pick up the data what's needed. And this is also, even if it's a kind of a centralized approach, it's a step towards that decentralization, so that you build a large database with big data technology where everybody is able to connect and prepare the data. So the problem at the time was that the raw data was not capable to report. So there was so let's say a preparation missing link on top of those data in the data lakes, that it's raw data is not prepared, standardized, harmonized. No quality insurance happened at that time. So that was the problem, that the data was available on raw data level, but it was not able to put the self-service BI tools on top of that and use all that data properly. So, but this step was also a first step to democratize the data, still in a centralized platform. And I think data products are still in a maybe built on a centralized platform, but built via decentralized teams on their own. So that's the next step for me. So there are a couple of different evolution steps. The data marts part, the big data part with all these self-service capabilities, and also the so let's say the new approaches with data products in behind.
I think there I would like to have, because I was heavily focused on the big data world, and I think everything started with basically the upcoming of Hadoop and the big data lakes. And Hadoop is based on two fundamental concepts: the Hadoop distributed file system, here you have already distribution there, and then the map produce concept, basically mapping out chunks of data and process them locally. So they were actually, there was a technical approach in the big data world, like how can we process massive amounts of data, structured or unstructuredly, but how can we technically scale? And I think it was a great evolution at that time. But you clearly mentioned already, like the shift towards data products. Can you just elaborate why this was necessary, or the logical next evolution?
Yeah, I think the main problem with those centralized approaches, either it's a data warehouse or data lake or whatever, or lake house, or was the last version of that game. When you have tons of different business requirements from different business areas, and everybody wants to solve that problem immediately, and if you have a centralized team which cares about all those requests, it's a bottleneck. It's not possible to fulfill all those business requirements. And when you have that centralized approaches, there's an additional problem when you have a specific business problem and you want to analyze revenues with a specific perspective, for instance. Maybe this kind of perspective is not the same which is implemented in that centralized solution, or is the same requirement from other parties. So you have a very specific point of view on the data, and you are the only one who wants to see the data in this manner. So that are the reasons why it makes sense for me to decentralize all those things, so that a specific business department is able to fulfill that requirement for themselves, even if nobody else is looking on the data like this. Yeah, so that's one thing which is one of the most important drivers from my point of view. And on the other hand, of course, the agility. If you want to have or want to implement those specific business requirements, and you rely on that centralized team, and you are on the roadmap, and you will see the results out of your request in 8-12 months or even later. Of course, after that time, you maybe have a complete different requirement at that time, and you no longer rely on that requirement what you have asked for 12 months ago. So that is the problem from my point of view, that there's much more agility, and it's not always a requirement what you need to have day by day. So maybe you have a very specific requirement at one point in time, and then you need to answer immediately for this requirement. And if this requirement also needs some data preparation, that's the reason why it's not only on the front end layer, but also on the back end layer, and you have to prepare the data as you want. So that's the reason why I think it makes sense to decentralize those things. But decentralizing generates additional challenges to manage all those decentralized initiatives. So on the one hand, I have argued that a very specific point of view of revenue makes sense for that specific business area, but maybe it's also good to have a common understanding on revenue or other KPIs or other structures which are generally defined as standards inside the organization, so that everybody has the same picture if somebody picks those things, of course. So that's a little bit the challenge of decentralizing those things, but I think decentralizing is quite necessary so that you can answer requests immediately and you have the agility to do that in this case. The most important thing what we have to think about is how we can manage those decentralized solutions in the future so that it works similar. So I'm quite sure that it will not work similar like the centralized things, but quite similar in terms of standardization and governance and data quality and all those other aspects. So that's the biggest challenge, to think about how we can manage that. And that's I think that's the part of the game where many companies are struggling with that approach. Only having a data platform, only having the tools to prepare data and visualize data, it's not the full capability what you right now will need in your environments. You need additional capabilities to manage decentralized data teams in terms of governance and in terms of used tools inside those data product teams and so on. So that's an additional tool set what you will need in the future when you move from that centralized approach to that decentralized approach.
Yeah, and which are, in your opinion, the best practices to be applied in a decentralized schema?
So in general, I think that the most common misunderstanding of decentralizing is that everybody is deciding their own data platform and toolings and things like that. So decentralization, from my point of view, in terms of the data products approach, doesn't mean to give the decisions to all those decentralized teams. So what I think is quite important is that there is a kind of a composition of tools what you need to prepare for these data product teams. And if somebody is asking for a specific type of data product, means I need to prepare data, I need to integrate data, I need to report data, whatever you want to do inside your data product, you should have a kind of a set of tools which are supporting you during that journey. And that kind of data product tooling should be able to be defined centralized. And each decentralized team should press a button and say, okay, I want to consume data product type A or B or C or whatever, a specific composition of tools, and the infrastructure and the tooling is provided to the data teams immediately. So that's important, that they don't have to wait for months when they request a dedicated data product, and so they want to start immediately with the work. So you have to have a kind of a provisioning of the infrastructure and the tooling for them, and you have to care about some centralized rules, for instance, in terms of standardization, how to implement those things. That could be a kind of an architectural guide, or at least the minimum, there should be a kind of a guidance in terms of, okay, when you prepare data, you should implement some data quality rules on that level, or recognize the excess of the data in terms of handling GDPR relevant data and so on. So this is the additional infrastructure what you have to care about, so that you are able to scale a lot of different data products and data product teams inside your organization. When you think in the past, there was one centralized team. There was not a problem to provide infrastructure to others. There was only one team on one infrastructure with a dedicated set on tooling. So now you have maybe 200 different teams in your organization working on those data products. That's so let's say a management challenge of the infrastructure behind. Yeah, but it could be a centralized data platform. Yeah, which is used by 200 different teams in the organization.
So
Does that answer the question, David?
yeah. And now I was going to ask you, of course, in a decentralized environment, governance once again becomes key, right? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think what I have described a little bit, there are a couple of different aspects of governance. So in terms of governing the infrastructure behind is one thing. The architecture, how to implement those data products is one part. And a way how to ensure data quality is one part of the game. And also the handling of the data if it comes to different compliance rules or the other things which may limit the access for the data what you prepare in those things. So you have to care about a lot of different aspects in terms of governance from my point of view. And again, when it is distributed to that huge number on different teams, you have to think about how to automate those governance processes with different policies, for instance, which are distributed like the infrastructure is distributed to those teams. And I think without any support in that area in terms of automating the processes, because when you start with that approach, maybe you have a set of different rules and governance rules in your organization, and from time to time you will change them. And then you have to ensure how to bring those new rules or new versions of rules to all those existing teams again. Yeah, so then that's a big challenge when you start with that process. Maybe you are not aware of the problem, but when you're inside of 1 year and you grow from 1 to 50 or 100 data products, that problem will occur very soon. And it's from my point of view, you should care about those topics from the day one of the initiative, because otherwise you will never catch all those different things back to a standardized and governed process.
Based on the experience, have you seen like companies adapting these data products as a part of, let's say, a data quality initiative? Because I think if you have probably hundreds of data products in the company, and there will be some SLAs to the products, and some products will be, well, having less quality and some will have more quality. Have you seen like some central steering boards or incentivizations for why should an organization provide more qualified data? What was your experience there?
Yeah, I've seen some companies which are starting with that data products approach, where different teams are preparing, so let's say also some base structures for the reporting in different data products. So product structures, customer structures, whatever reporting structure you have in mind. And then they step back and use that kind of hub and spoke approach, where they put all those harmonized structures in a hub part, and then other data products can consume those maintained standardized structures. And with that approach, they try to achieve more data quality in those structures, which are mainly used for other products to prepare the data out of that. So I saw that some companies are starting with a completely decentralized approach, and then moving back partly with that hub and spoke approach to maintain and manage the most important structures of the data in a more centralized approach again. Yeah, and let the other data products consume them. So the problem, what you have mentioned, Tim, in terms of there is maybe a different level on data quality on different data products. I think this problem will occur when you have a huge reuse of data or the outcome of data products. So what I'm currently assume that there are a lot of data products for a specific business requirement, and the reuse of those data products is not that high that the problem of a lower data quality in that area will occur in the whole organization. So that will only appear if you have a data product which are huge reuse in other data products. Then you have the problem distributed in your organization. But I think most of the organizations are now moving from that centralized approach to that decentralized approach, and they will experience in the future, so maybe in 1 or 2 years, that there are different levels of quality, and the reusability of those things is not that high. So you have a couple of different data products, and they are all specific things and specific purposes, but not in that high reuse of the outcomes of those products. When I think there's also that problem that what I've mentioned with the hub and spoke approach. When companies are starting with those data products, it's a little bit backflash for me to that early times before the centralized approach, because at that time we have different silos. Everybody is talking about different structures and different meanings of KPIs, no harmonized and governed definitions of those things. And this will occur again with that first draft of decentralization, because everybody is preparing the data for themselves, call it with a small headline, and maybe this is misleading for others in terms of the understanding of the data inside those things. So I think it's that will occur, that you will have a kind of refactoring of those data products which are currently produced, in terms of, okay, the next version of those things we try to achieve to harmonize some structures again. But it would be not the right approach to force organizations to harmonize first and then build data products again afterwards, because then you are in the same situation as you are in the centralized approach. So you have to give them the ability to build something which is not the perfect state, but maybe answer the requirement, and then step by step optimize the not perfect state again and bring back standardization. So that's what you have to do. So I think it's the same approach what you normally do in software engineering. So you start with an agile approach. You do something, and after a while you think, okay, I'm walking the wrong way, so we have to step back, re-engineer a thing, and optimize again. So I think that's the approach what we could learn from the software development, that not only how we manage data products in terms of storing metadata or code in Git repositories as we do in software development, but also thinking about that agile development approach, reworking after a while and refactoring all those things and then step forward again with some initiatives. So that's my point of view. So that seems to be for some guys which are coming. So the centralized approach is a little bit burned in my brain as well. So I'm from that generation, but I think everybody has to learn that you should walk forward with that agile approach, even if it's not the perfect thing, what you have in mind. You see the problems, but anyway, go this direction and do it and rework it after a while, because that's the better result, because you have a dedicated outcome, and even the outcome which is produced at the first time is valuable for those data teams. So that's they should not wait for the perfect state and the never-ending story.
I have one final question. It might be a bit provoked, but can you see a case where the whole decentralization initiative will collapse and everyone will start talking again to centralize things?
If I see that scenario,
yeah. If you can think of any kind of scenario that could lead, because it's always like this black and white discussion, and now we try to decentralize most of the things, and there will be a boomerang back and forth.
Yeah, I fully agree. I always compare those things with a kind of a pendulum, which is walking from left to right and backwards. So I think it's a couple of months ago I read a blog post with that data democratization journey, and that's exactly what I've mentioned. So that there's always a kind of an extreme centralizing, extreme decentralizing, and so on. So as always in life, somewhere in the middle, it's the perfect part to do things. So I think it will not go back to that forced centralized thing what we experienced, so let's say 20, 25 years ago. But that kind of approach, what I mentioned with that hub and spoke part, that's a kind of a walk back to that centralizing parts of the structures and reusing them in different data products. That's one approach, which is a kind of a combination of centralizing and decentralizing. So I think it will be a kind of a movement like a pendulum, but it will not move back to that centralized parts. From my point of view, it will be something in the middle. And what I experienced is that in the past you have that need that you take a look on the data with a timeline of 3 years, 5 years back. And the current requirements of reporting are not that long-term perspectives. It's more short-term perspective on a very accurate and current data set. So the problem, what occurs when you have that long-term perspective, that you have to ensure all the changes of structures over the 3 or 5 years. So you have to historize the data and manage all those things. If so, maybe you remember the term slowly changing dimensions at that time. So you have to handle all those different structures over the time, how they behave and move from one category to another category. And I think the current requirements on reporting are not that long-term perspectives. It's more short-term perspective. And in this case, it's not that a huge problem if you have fully harmonized and standardized data. You have to have a picture on that set of data, and it's not that important that it's integrated with the data from 3 years ago. So it's not interesting for those requirements. So in this case, it's not that huge problem to decentralize those things and not being harmonized in that full state what we experienced in the past.
So, Tim, you can do also the outro if you want to. So thank you very much, Gregor. It was really nice. It was a really nice talk. And I think also data decentralization, it's also there, not only in the software development. So thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
No, you are at home. You can come whenever you want.
Sorry?
You are. This is your home, so you can come back whenever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice to have a further discussion in the future, because there are a lot of things going on in the area of AI, agentic AI, and so on.
AI is a very nice scenario for the centralization.
So, but putting all together in 1 hour or one podcast is a little bit too much, I think. But talking about how AI, Gen AI, is influencing all those data management parts, that would be quite interesting for me, because that's what I'm thinking a lot. It's a little bit disrupting all the industry in terms of how you develop solutions in the future. And maybe we can do a further podcast on that topic in the future as well.
Perfect. That's a date. So for the next time, stay tuned. And thank you, Tim. Thank you, David. And we will see us at the next podcast. Just don't forget to subscribe us at Spotify, LinkedIn, and also on YouTube. And we will see us at the next time. So thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.